Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really remarkable stack of sources. It's a structured toolkit, really, for intentional leadership.
It is, and it's focused on one essential transformation,
Hmm.
how a vision moves from just being a promise on a piece of paper
Right.
to becoming a tangible living purpose. It's full of discussion questions, exercises, and these really specific to-do
So it's
lists.
not just theory.
Not at all. It's meant to give leaders both strategic clarity and a deep spiritual conviction.
And our mission for you, the learner, is to kind of give you a shortcut through all this. We
Yeah.
want to unpack the difference between leaders who just manage
hmm
and those who truly transform their organizations by aligning a divine calling with their day-to-day actions.
And we have to start with what is probably the most provocative idea in the whole toolkit, and it's right there in the beginning.
Okay?
It says a leader's biggest limitation isn't usually a lack of money or talent, it's a lack of revelation.
A lack of revelation. Wow. So you can't build a strategy if you don't even know the source of the vision.
Exactly. That reframes everything. Most of us think the hard part is fundraising or recruiting.
Yeah, the logistics.
But these sources say the real hard part is learning to hear clearly.
Okay, so let's unpack that. That takes us right into section 1, establishing the God-given vision and testing for alignment.
Precisely. If revelation is the starting point, then the first job is discernment. How do you tell the difference between a really good, smart idea?
And a God-ordained vision.
Right. And the toolkit forces the leader to commit to this.
Yeah.
All strategy has to begin with seeking God's voice, not just, grabbing the latest management trend. That takes incredible discipline.
Which brings up this idea of stewardship versus authorship. I mean, you're the steward, not the author. But for a driven leader, how do you stop your own ego from hijacking the whole thing?
Well, that boundary is always being tested. The material really forces you to scrutinize your own motives.
And other warning signs.
Oh, definitely. The big one is when the vision seems to only make the leader look good. Or if the vision completely depends on that one leader being there.
Ah, so if it collapses without you, it was probably about you.
It was likely built on personal ambition, not a durable, divine calling. Ambition builds monuments to a person. A calling builds a movement that can outlast them.
That's a great distinction. So once you've checked that source integrity, the next step is communication, making the vision plain.
Yes, and this is where the practical meets the spiritual. They offer this powerful clarity check.
Okay.
They ask, if your vision had to fit into 3 sentences that even a child could understand, would it still have power?
Oof. That is a brutal test. Because some visions are genuinely complex, right? Like a community development strategy.
Right.
How do you simplify without just dumbing it down?
The point isn't to dumb it down, it's to distill the why. The goal is to leave people inspired, not just informed.
And if you can't do that,
If you fail that test, then your team spends all its time debating memos and logistics instead of just executing with unity. Clarity cuts down on all that internal friction.
which demands accountability. So before you act, you have to test it for true alignment. How do you make sure the vision isn't just an echo of, popular culture or some political trend?
You need a filter, a structured one. The sources give you this alignment checklist to apply to every single major decision.
A constant audit.
A spiritual audit, yeah. And it asks 3 questions that cut through all the noise. First, does this glorify God or me?
Okay.
Second, does it serve people or just the system? And third, does it reflect eternal values or is it just about temporary organizational gain?
If you can't say yes to those, you have to course correct immediately.
Exactly. That's the difference between transformation and just management.
This is a perfect transition into section 2 then,
Mm.
mobilizing people and translating vision into strategy. So you have the revelation, you have the clarity, now you need to get people on board.
And that starts with the story. The leader's narrative creates the culture. The stories you tell have to magnify God's work, not your own achievements.
It's less about the logical plan and more about the emotional proof.
Yes. It has to connect emotionally. You have to show the living proof of the vision. That's what gets people to move from being passive followers.
To becoming what you called fellow vision carriers, people who own a piece of it.
Exactly. And that happens through empowerment, not hoarding. When you empower people to truly own parts of the vision, their engagement just skyrockets.
So how do you do that practically?
Well, the sources suggest using something they call an engagement map.
An engagement map. Is that like an org chart?
It's much more than that. It goes beyond just assigning tasks. It helps a leader visually map where a team member's spiritual gifts, their talents, their passions,
Oh, interesting.
where all that intersects with the mission. So people aren't just filling a slot, they feel like they're fulfilling their own calling within the bigger vision.
Connecting their internal wiring to the external purpose. I love that.
Hmm.
Okay, now for the hard part. Strategy. Chapter 7 in the sources poses a huge challenge. It asks if your strategies serve the vision.
Or, and this is the danger, if strategy itself has become a substitute for faith.
Wow. What does that mean exactly?
It means you start relying only on what you can control, the budget, your network, your own skills, and you lose that spiritual edge. The toolkit says you have to treat planning and execution as a form of worship.
Worship. So does that mean you, plan less and pray more?
It means you treat planning as prayerful discernment. You're still disciplined, but you anchor it in trust, not in a fear of failure. When execution is worship, you stop just being busy and anxious, and you make sure every single action is intentional and spiritually sound.
That intentionality leads right into section 3. Accountability, resilience, and legacy. Because no matter how solid your plan is, you're going to face resistance.
Always. And the guidance here is to respond discerningly. Don't just dismiss critics as noise.
Which is the first instinct.
It is, but the leader is challenged to ask, could this opposition actually be an invitation to refine the vision? The questions people raise, even if they're delivered badly, often point to a real weakness in your plan.
That requires so much humility. And speaking of measuring things, how do you shift from measuring typical organizational success, numbers on a spreadsheet, to measuring spiritual fruit?
You have to change what you celebrate. Are you celebrating attendance figures and budget surpluses? Or are you celebrating the things only God can really measure?
Like character development or relational healing?
Exactly, spiritual maturity. The toolkit pushes you to shift your metrics from just surface-level impact toward genuine spiritual health.
And that kind of high standard demands an equally high level of accountability for the leader.
It has to. The sources ask, who holds you accountable? And this is the critical part. Do they have your explicit written permission to confront you when you start to drift?
Wow, written permission.
Yes. Accountability has to be empowered. You have to willingly submit to a structure that protects the vision's purpose over your own convenience. Otherwise, it's not real accountability.
Okay. And what about when things change? When there's a downturn or a big cultural shift? Do you adapt the methods or do you abandon the mission?
The mission is the anchor. That stays fixed. The methods, though, have to be flexible. The sources talk about creating a vision flexibility plan.
A vision flexibility plan.
Yeah, it's basically pre-planning how your strategy and methods will adjust when pressure hits, so you can stay nimble without ever abandoning your core spiritual mandate.
And that brings us to the final measure, legacy. The last chapter says it's not about what you achieve personally. It's about reproduction.
This is the toughest commitment for most successful leaders. It asks you a very direct question. Are you raising successors or are you just building systems?
Systems feel safer.
Much safer. They offer control. Successors introduce risk. You have to release control. You have to invest. You have to mentor. But that mentoring is the only way the mission outlasts the founder.
So wrapping this all up for you, the learner, the whole toolkit is really about a continuous cycle. Practice, reflect, and refine.
Right. This journey from a simple promise to an enduring purpose isn't a one-time event. It requires constant self-auditing, maybe through something like a weekly alignment review they mentioned.
A scheduled discipline.
A discipline to make sure your daily actions are driven by God-centered priorities, not just by what's convenient or what's yelling the loudest.
And as you think about how to apply this, about moving from being a manager to being a transformer, here's the final provocative thought from the source material we want to leave you with.
Leadership is not proven by what you build, but by what you birth in others.
So what one courageous decision can you make this week to focus less on being remembered and more on intentionally reproducing faithful leaders? That is your next step.